Hi, everybody. I'm Carrie Gardy. I'm the director of the Career Development Center at Kutztown University. You are watching this video to learn successful interviewing tips. Interviewing is one of my most favorite presentations to share with students and talk about with students, because the lesson here is you could be the best candidate for that internship, that job, that seat in that graduate school program. But if you don't interview well, you won't get it. Your resume, your graduate school application, the goal there is to just get an interview. The interviews land you the positions or the seat in the graduate school program. Okay, so in this presentation, you will learn to identify the tasks of things to do before, of course, during, and even after an interview. Be able to express yourself concisely and confidently, and really understand why employers are asking what they're asking. So why do we interview? Why don't employers or grad schools just look at your resume, your cover letter, your LinkedIn profile, or your application and hire you? They are trying to figure some things out, and they really can't do that until they talk with you, whether that's in person or remotely. Every employer is asking themselves, can you do the job? Based on the facts on your resume, cover letter, and LinkedIn profile, I'm assuming you can do the job. That's why I've offered you an interview. But I can't tell the next two questions until I talk with you. Will you do the job? So there's a lot of people out there that can do things and they don't. So will you do the job? Do you have the right motivation? Is it a good connection? Are you going to be happy with the position and work hard? I can't figure that out until I have a conversation. And then the other thing they're trying to assess is what you can add to their team. So do you bring a diverse, different perspective, different talents and experiences? I'm hoping so. I want to round out my team, and I have needs and goals and objectives that I have to have met. And I want to make sure that you're a good complement to our team. Why you interview, of course, also is the opportunity to sell yourself and your qualifications, your knowledge and your skills. Think about skills, really important to employers. To determine if it's the job you want and the organization you want, and of course, to get the offer. Interviewing is a cycle. And what we mean by that is a skill. What we mean by that is you may not naturally be good at interviewing, but you can practice, get feedback from a career coach, and get better at it. It's a skill. You can improve. Some of us are naturally good at playing basketball. No one coached me. I can pick up a basketball and throw it. But if I'm not just naturally good at it, I can have some coaching and improve. It's a fact. It's a cycle, meaning hopefully every interview you go on, it makes you better for the next interview. Rare is the case that a college graduate has one interview with dream employer, dream salary, and stays there until they're 65 years old. So we have interviews, we learn from them, and it helps us with the next interview. And that's why it's necessary. You'll be interviewing over and over again. And hopefully every interview you go on, you're even better at it the next time. Okay, let's talk about the first part, which is preparing for an interview. This is the next couple slides are what you need to do before you are face to face with that employer. This is so important. There are people out there in the country today who have an interview this afternoon and did not do any of the pre-preparation, and they will not fare as well as if they did. First thing you need to do is assess yourself. So this is where we encourage students, graduates to step back and really evaluate what you want to share with that employer. What are your skills and abilities? What have you learned or gained from the academic program here at Kutztown, as well as your experiences? What interests you? What are you passionate about? What do you do? You're working in the moment and the time flies. You're really engaged in that task or project. What's important to you? What do you value? This, frankly, also helps you to determine what to apply for. when you have a good understanding of yourself. Your educational experiences. So yes, of course you were this major. We know that, right? But what about being that major? What course did you take that was challenging? What course did you take that you learned a lot, that really opened your eyes to some different career paths? The employers are probably going to ask you, and certainly graduate schools, about your educational experience beyond just what your major was. Your other experiences, work experiences, even our cheesy part-time jobs that we love or hate, that all of us have had, they're very important. You can talk about time management, teamwork, gaining skills, problem solving. Get ready to talk about those experiences and the skills you've gained from them. Obviously, your internship, if you've done an internship and you're applying for a full-time position because you're graduating soon, you want to really talk about that. That's a critical piece. Research experiences. Prepare your stories and be ready to demonstrate these. And then career goals and direction. And one warning here is sometimes students come across to an employer, especially those that really aren't sure of what they want to do. And they're typically the students that haven't gotten related experiences and done an internship, and that's why they're not sure. But sometimes those students will say to an employer, oh, I'll do anything. I'm open to, I really don't know what I want to do, but I'm willing to do anything to gain experience. And they think that's a positive, but to most employers, that is not. Because often those people, if I were to hire you, you might quit in 6 months because you really weren't sure, and then you started and realized it's not a good fit for you. That's why it is so important as a sophomore, junior, senior to find part-time jobs, summer jobs that are somewhat related to your major and your possible future career goals. That's why it's important to do an internship, even if it's not required for your major. That's why it's important to do research, volunteer experience, etc., related to your major and your possible future career. The next part of pre-interview prep is to practice interviewing. So important. This is where you practice answering out loud the questions that you anticipate they will ask. And I'm going to show you a list of questions that they will ask and you can ask. Most employers, any industry, ask, 70% of the questions they asked are all the same. Typical questions they want to know about you being an employee. And then about 30% of the questions asked in an interview are those, of course, that are specific to the position, the employer, the industry. So if you're applying for a research analyst position, get ready for the research questions. If you're applying for a caseworker position, get ready to talk about advocating and providing community services for clients. So obviously you need to get ready for those. What is important is that out loud. It's one thing to sit on your bed in your apartment and think about these questions. It is another thing to practice it, to say it out loud. And it is important to get feedback so you can improve. So the Career Center offers Mock Interview Mania Week each semester. And that's where we have employer volunteers watch your recorded interviews on Big Interview. You see the URL there. Or meet you in person here in the Career Center and do a practice interview and give you feedback. Take advantage of that. Sign up for a mock interview. You'll never see that employer again. You don't want to practice on your first, your dream employer when you land that interview. You want to practice on people so you get more comfortable talking about yourself and explaining who you are and what you have to offer. Candid Careers on this slide because that is a resource that the Career Center recently began to offer where you can watch interviews of professionals in all different careers to really learn more about what's out there and have an understanding of career paths. So that's great for any student that's trying to figure out what they want to do. And also it helps you prepare for interviews. You can also go to Candid Career and they have topical interviews. So you can look up things like salary negotiation or interviewing tips and watch these short videos on by professionals of what they the advice that they give you. Oh, and just real quickly, back to Big Interview. Anytime you can log in, use your single sign-on, record a practice interview, and then you click and you send it to the Career Center, and we will give you feedback just like we do on resumes and cover letters. All right, the other step to preparing for the interview, you haven't even gotten to that interview yet, is to research the organization. And the message here is don't insult the employer. Sometimes an employer might say, well, tell us what you know about our organization. Or what did you think about our website? What was the one takeaway, something new you learned? And if your response is, oh, I'm so sorry, I've had such a busy week, I didn't get to do that. Or if you say some general statement that like everyone knows, like, I know you guys do this, it will be obvious that you didn't do it. And that's very insulting. How can you not want to know more about that organization? You're going to be interviewing with them and hopefully working or interning with them. It's so simple. Jump on their website, follow them on social media, and understand the list that's before you. Mission statement, vision, their history. What products and services do they offer? What's the latest? What's the news? What are the goals or trends? What kind of programs and events do they offer? Their locations, their positions, and most importantly, what skills are they seeking? Hopefully you can find that out from their website. You might also jump on LinkedIn and look them up through LinkedIn and see the people that have worked there or are working there and the types of skills that they have. So be prepared. Don't insult the employer. And then the last part of, well, second to last part of pre-interview preparation is confirming the details. So don't assume you have a half-hour interview with one person. It could be a panel. It could be a 4-hour, half-day interview. It could include a tour. You really just don't know. And if they aren't sharing that with you, you need to ask. And that actually shows professionalism and maturity, that you would say, can you tell me a little bit about what I should expect as far as the interview? The date, the time, the location. How long does it take you to get there? So this is the quiz. If you have an interview at 3 p.m. and Google Maps says it takes an hour, you should not leave at 1:30. That means you're getting there at 2:30 in a perfect world, which we know the world isn't perfect. And really, if the interview is at 3, in your head, you're saying, I need to get there at 2:45. So if you leave at 1:30, get there at 2:30, you only have a 15-minute window to park, go to the restroom, and that means there's hopefully no traffic, no construction. So don't leave at 1:30. Leave at 1. Hopefully you'll get there by 2, maybe 2:30, and that's fine. At 2:45, 2:50 at the latest, 10 minutes before that interview, you're walking in the door. So again, confirm the details. The other piece to pre-interview preparation, of course, is to think about how you're presenting yourself. Make sure you're dressed professionally. We're not talking beauty contest. We're talking, are you appropriately, professionally dressed, groomed, and accessorized? The message here is you want them to do a mental check, like, oh, okay, this student is appropriately dressed, groomed, and accessorized. They're ready for the interview. They're taking this serious. They understand our industry. And then they move on to the content of who you are. They're not distracted by your inappropriate professional presentation. Just know that we have a career closet here at the university. Hopefully you've heard about this. If not, I'm glad you're listening now. So we have a lot of clothing. It's down the hall from the Career Center. Whenever you want to come shopping, just call or email at careerhelp@kutztown.edu, and we'll set up a date and time. You can go down. There's a bathroom right next door to the career closet. You can look through all the clothing. The clothing has been donated by Kutztown University employees, alumni, community members. There's also a lot of brand new clothing down there. We had money given to us for the career closet from PSCCU, the credit union, as well as Clark Associates, an employer partner with the Career Center. So there's also brand new clothing. All pieces are only $2, and that money actually goes back to KU students in a scholarship fund for the TRIO SSSP program. So please take advantage of that. It's fun. You just go down the hall and from the Career Center and you shop and can get a whole bunch of pieces of professional clothing and get ready for interviews or even class presentations, student teaching, and of course, professional interviews. All right. You are there. You're at the site. Now let me just quickly go back here. You've assessed yourself. You know what you want to say, what you want to emphasize. You've prepared your stories. You're ready to go. You've practiced. You're anticipating the questions they'll ask. For the most part, you have a sense of that. You've practiced saying it. You've researched the organization. You have an understanding of who you're meeting with. You've confirmed the details. You know what to expect. You're professionally dressed, groomed, and accessorized. And now you're feeling much more confident. So that's the idea of that whole pre-interview prep. You're better prepared and you're more confident. All right, introductions. As I said, arrive early. So if the interview's at 3, you tell yourself 2:45, I need to be there. Firm handshake, confident handshake, good eye contact. By the way, you might get feedback when you record your interview on a big interview that you're not looking into the camera. So you want to make sure you have a good eye contact. You want to pay attention to your posture, sit up straight, shoulders back. You want to smile. You can laugh in an interview. You can be yourself. The best interviewers are those that make the interviewee feel comfortable. I want to know the real you. You'll be working, 40, 60 hours a week with us. So it's okay to be personable. It's expected. When we're nervous, sometimes we ramble on or too quickly. So please speak clearly and slowly. Questioning. There's 2 common types of questions that employers ask. And your job is, again, to know them, prepare, and speak out loud while you're practicing. General and behavioral based. So general questions help the employer gain a feel for who you are, expands on the facts that are on your resume and cover letter, and really just to see if you're a good match with the position. So here are some common questions. Tell me about yourself. Why are you interested in our organization? Describe your academic coursework and involvement. What are your greatest strengths and weaknesses? That last one is a pretty common question. Let's talk about that a minute. So strengths, it's pretty easy for us to come up with 2 strengths. Like they say, give me 2 strengths and 2 weaknesses. That's pretty easy. Again, think about the employer. What do they want? So pick the 2 that are of most importance to the employer, not to you. And then weaknesses, when you share a weakness, you need to share 2. But you share it as if you're aware of it and you're working on it. Maybe you almost don't even have it anymore. So my example I always share is you wouldn't come out and say, I'm late all the time. Great. Who's going to hire you if you admit you're late all the time? You might want to say, well, I will say when I started college, I had a habit of being late. And I realized that I needed to make some changes. So I really pay attention to my schedule. I allow travel time. I set my alarm earlier. I learned to get up earlier and go to bed earlier. Again, so it's recognition of these weaknesses, but you're working on them, and that's an okay thing. Behavioral-based questions are really to see how you respond to certain situations. So the concept here is your past behavior predicts future performance or future behavior. So this is a really good interviewer will ask you these questions. And this is where they would say, describe an experience in which you worked with a difficult person. They're not going to say, are you a leader? And you're going to say, yes, I'm a leader. That's a poor interview question. A behavioral based question would be, give me an example of a time where you had to use your leadership skills. Tell me about a large scale project you completed. Give me an example of a time where you demonstrated leadership. So remember, the pre-interview prep was to anticipate these questions. They're pretty common. So your job is to say, oh, okay, that job that I had last summer, that one time that this happened, that I'm going to use that as my example to talk about problem solving. I'm going to use this as an example to talk about teamwork or customer service, leadership, and have those stories ready to go. And again, practice saying them out loud, not just thinking them. When you're giving this story, telling this, answering this behavioral based question, always keep in mind the STAR method. And it's very simple. When you give the answer about a difficult employer colleague that you worked with, the situation or task. So the situation is, and you explain how this person was challenging, maybe not doing what was expected of them, but yet you had to work in a team together. The action you took. Okay, so what did you do about that? Did you approach the person? Did you go to the supervisor? And then the R is the result. So what came of it? Too often people don't include that R, the result. So you should go right into, at the end of your quick, succinct story about this, what came of it. So looking back on it, I wish I would have done this differently, or we actually had a great conversation and it ended up we were able to work together. We weren't the best of friends, but we worked it through, and we were fine working together. So if an employer is really interested in you and you're not fulfilling that R, they might say, well, what happened? What came of that? They're trying to get to learn the result. If they're not that interested in you, they're not going to dig to find out why. So again, make sure you use the STAR method. There are inappropriate or illegal questions that employers ask. If they're centered on these topics, there's the list, then you know that that is an illegal question and or inappropriate. So that might happen. You might be asked something related to this. Maybe the employer doesn't care that it's an illegal or inappropriate. Maybe they're not trained appropriately. Maybe it's not someone in HR, but it's a manager who hasn't had training on the fact that they shouldn't ask this in an interview. You have some options there. So let's say they ask you about your marital status, something like that. You have some choices. You could respond. You could think it's not a big deal. I'll let them know and respond. You could decline, and you can do it in a gracious way and say, well, I'm not sure how that's appropriate for the position. I don't think I'm going to answer that. And maybe that'll, make them realize, oh, okay. You could ask yourself how the question relates to the job to determine the underlying issue and respond to the issue. So let's say it was something about like, oh, is your husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend going to relocate with you? Are you prepared to move? You could say, oh, I'm assuming you're not really answer them. I'm assuming you're asking that because I would have to relocate from Pennsylvania or New Jersey. I am prepared to do that. I wouldn't apply and go through this process if I weren't serious about relocating. That's my plan, to move to Miami after I graduate. So again, you're skirting around their inappropriate or illegal question and getting to that underlying issue. Another thing to consider is, do you want to work for an organization that asks illegal or inappropriate questions? Does this one person reflect an entire organization? That's up to you, and that's a decision you'll have to make. It's so important to pay attention to communication. You need to watch your nonverbals when you're interviewing, whether it's through Microsoft Teams or Zoom, or it's in person. Pay attention to your poise, your posture. Be confident and assertive. Smile, have good eye contact, show enthusiasm, show positive attitude. They want someone with energy. Pay attention to language. Your language can really, it can hinder or hurt a person throughout their entire career. So watch your grammar. We all misspeak certain things or have little things we say wrongly or inappropriately. But if it becomes something that lowers their impression of you, that you don't appear as educated as you should be with a bachelor's or master's or doctoral degree, then you really want to try to work on your grammar and your communication skills to not, hurt yourself. So words like thinking, doing, and saying instead of thinking, doing, and saying. I say gonna instead of going to. You would never start with me. Me and Joe are going to work on this project. It would be Joe and I. Or you would say, come along with me. So you would say, come along with Joe and me, not Joe and I. Trying to think of other common ones. Oh, overuse of the word like. So like in my internship, like what I did was I was in charge of this project. Oh my God. So help yourself break that habit. Pay attention to the ums and the uhs. Certainly those come out more when we're nervous, but it could really hinder you. So it's something you need to pay attention to. And if you did a recording on Big Interview and watched yourself being interviewed, you would be able to pick up pretty quickly when you are overusing the word like. Avoid slang terms, sloppy articulation. Have your friends correct you. Have your friends say something to you to help you break the habit. Okay, some questioning tips. Make sure you understand the question. If you don't, it's okay once or twice to say, can you repeat that? Or I'm not sure what you're asking about. That's okay. Only once or twice. So you can have, I'm jumping ahead, the third bullet there. Take a few seconds to respond. You can do that and gather your thoughts and then respond. If they ask you something you don't know the answer to, you can say so. That might happen. You could say, I don't know, but I'll do the research after this interview and email you with the answer by tomorrow. Wow, love it. You could say, I don't know, but this is what I would do to find out. Don't ramble, especially for those of you who are nervous ramblers. You need to nip that in the bud. Be clear, be concise. But I will say the next bullet is probably more common, where students are too quick or vague. We say that a lot on resume reviews as well. A student will put that they coordinated this project for maybe a club or organization they're in. That's very vague. What does that mean by coordinating something? I don't know. Did you do the budget? Did you do marketing? Did you solicit volunteers? So don't be too quick or vague. This is your opportunity to sell yourself. Answering thoroughly and completely typically takes at least a minute per answer. So don't be too quick and then they don't have a sense of who you are and what you have to offer them. Include concrete, detailed, quantifiable data. Prepare those success stories. We talked about that. Be ready with those examples. Repeat your key strengths. Dwell on positive experiences. You don't ever want to talk negatively. Maybe it was the worst internship. You had the worst supervisor. You don't talk badly about anyone. You focus on the positives, what was learned or gained from each situation. Some other questioning tips. Remember, interviewing is a two-way street. You are assessing them as well. What do you need to know in order to make an informed decision? Don't ever accept an offer until you have everything clear, it's written down, you understand the expectations, the description. Always have questions prepared. Don't ever go to an interview without having questions. If at the end of the interview I say to you, okay, that's all the questions I have for you. What questions do you have for me? And you say, I think you covered everything. Thumbs down. How can you not have questions? That's insulting to me. Not questions you should know the answer to already from your research. Remember the pre-interview prep? One of the pieces was research. But how about just a question about what I enjoy about working here? That's a basic question. Don't ask questions you already should know the answers to. So why do you ask questions? It shows you're interested, excited, you're intelligent, and you're thorough. It shows them you've done your homework. So here are some sample questions. On your website, you mentioned you have a mentoring program. Could you tell me more about that? Well, that's a double positive because you're asking a question, but it's also showing me that you've done your research. You're really interested. And employers want to hire students, graduates who are interested. I want you to be excited about this opportunity. I don't want you to quit in 6 months. I don't want to have to go through this process again. I want it to be a great fit. You're going to work harder and do great things for me if it's a great fit for you. So you want to show enthusiasm. Can you describe the duties in more detail? What's the day-to-day environment like? How would my work impact the organization? What are the results or goals you want to see me produce within the first year? What makes for a successful person in this position? Those are some great questions. Topics to avoid: salary, vacation, and health or retirement questions. Yes, you want to know what this job is paid. They know you want to know, but you do not ask that. It shows misplaced priorities. There's a lot of other things you need to be asking about first. Don't ever accept an offer without that information, but it's not certainly a question that you ask. Finally, you're at the close of the interview. Be quick and courteous. Express your interest. I interviewed 2 people today. They both really want the job, but you at the end said, when can I expect to hear from you? Or how soon can I expect to hear from you? You both want it, but you appear to want it more, right? And then you asked questions, maybe 3 to 5, no more than that, but good questions. This candidate, equally qualified, didn't seem as interested, asked 1 question or no questions, I'm going to go with you. Get a business card, thank them, and then of course, send the thank you. You want to be in the minority of interviewees that send a thank you. There's different studies out there, but typically it's like 30 to 40% of people who interview in the United States remember to send a thank you email or put a little note card in the mail. You want to be in that minority. You want to stand out. You want to differentiate yourself. Maybe those 2 candidates I interviewed today were equally great, and I can't make a decision. I wish I could hire both of you, but I don't have it in my budget. Well, I get a thank you email when I come into work the next day. And maybe on your way home, you were thinking about a question that I asked and you thought, boy, why didn't I mention this? Or, I probably should have said this. You can include that in the email. You can say, I thought more about that question you asked about this and wanted to share this with you. Reiterate your strengths, your enthusiasm. And again, if you put something in the mail that will really stand out, you could do both. You could send an email that night and I get it the next day when I'm, working. And then you can put a note card in to really make yourself stand out. Because I'm busy and I'm not making a decision for a while. I'm interviewing many people, and that could be a differentiator. And then remember, we said interviewing is a cycle. So then you need to be a learned individual and process how that interview went. Step back and say, boy, they asked a lot of questions about this certain area. Maybe I need to add that to the thank you. Maybe I need to really be prepared to talk about it. Maybe you're going to be asked back for a second interview and you need to emphasize this area a little bit more. Maybe this one course you took that they are very interested in. But process, how did it go? What went well and what didn't? What question did they ask you that threw you for a loop? Think about that. What could you have said? What answer did you give that was beautiful? You just pulled it out of the depths of your brain and it was stunning, and you want to remember that because you might, again, have more interviews, that you might not get the position. You're going to be interviewing again and again. And again, that's the concept, to be better prepared for the next interview. Special situations. So here's just some tips on interviewing and all the different ways that we do it as human beings. Of course, there's a lot of phone interviewing in the beginning if they're trying to do screening interviews. So they don't want to go through the process of a full 45-minute interview to learn that it's just not a good fit and you're not the right person for the position. So a lot of organizations will do a 5 or 10-minute phone interview, just ask you maybe 3 questions. And then the candidates that stand out, they do make arrangements for a full interview. Video interview, obviously you want to avoid interruptions. You want to have a great background. This is not appropriate for interviewing. I would have a more solid background. You want to make sure you're dressed professionally in a full interview suit, especially if you're interviewing for a full-time professional position. Test your equipment. Just really be prepared. You can have notes, as it says under phone interview. You can have notes in front of you to help you, but really you're supposed to be, and I know I don't always do that, looking right into the camera. You might also have a panel or group interview. You need to look at this as a positive. Don't be intimidated by the numbers. Consider it an advantage. So not the decision doesn't rest on one person's impression. As I mentioned, I've been on several search committees for the university, and we'll have a candidate step out, and there's 3 of us on the committee, and it's amazing how all 3 of us pick up something different that the candidate said, or we really prefer this candidate over this one, but the other person on the committee prefers that candidate over the other one, and it's just fascinating. So it's good to have the reactions of multiple people. And if you are interviewing with a panel, especially in person, but even over Zoom, let's say, make sure you look at each one. You don't want to talk to just one person and kind of ignore the other 2. You want to make sure you include all of them as you're answering questions. Just some quick Zoom etiquette tips. It is still important to dress professionally. It is important to get rid of distractions. As I mentioned, pay attention to your background, check your mic, be on time, be aware of that background noise. That's really important. So we just added a couple quick tips. Okay, that is successful interviewing. I am going to share a resource. So this is our handout. And if you're interested in receiving it from us, just send us an email at Career Help. It's just a 2-page handout of everything we covered. But on the back, on the second page, are a list of questions that are often asked by all employers, all industries. And these are ones you need to be ready to go. And again, practice answering them out loud. Talk to yourself in the mirror, have a friend interview you. Practice on big interviews. Send us your interview from big interview, and we'll critique it and give you feedback. And then at the bottom are questions asked by you. So here are some great ones. Typically, again, you're only asking about 3 to 5 questions, but these are ones that you would want to know the answers to. So that is successful interviewing. Please reach out to the Career Center. We're here to help you, and good luck with interviewing.